So welcome everyone to the March ARSA Superintendent's Roundtable. I'm really glad that you were able to join us today because we have a long-awaited position at ADE that we have a wonderful person that's going to be filling. It's a brand new desk for the department. And so having the opportunity to talk to the person that's going to head it and give him some feedback and some context around what it is we deal with in the field, I think is really going to help set him up for success, as well as make sure that we are able to communicate in a frank and open way with him so that he knows what we need and we know how we can help him to do the things that we're going to be asking him to do. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Melissa Sadorf. I'm the superintendent of the Stanfield Elementary School District here in Pinal County. And I also serve as the Arizona Rural Schools Association president. And thank you for the honor of allowing me to help inform the work that we're doing here in our rural communities here in Arizona. And without further ado, I'd really like to make sure that oh, there we go, Sean. I wasn't sure if you were going to be at the office today, so I'll let you jump in and introduce yourself, and then we can get going with our guest.
All right. Well, my name is Sean Rickard. I'm the superintendent of the Pima Unified School District and president-elect of the Arizona Rural Schools Association. And glad to be here and really excited to have the opportunity to talk to Mr. Dunkerson. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And so without further ado, Henry Dunkerson is a specialist at the Department of Ed, and I'll let him talk more about that. But he also is a rural guy, which is something that I find very exciting, that we have somebody that we don't have to spend the first 10 minutes of every conversation talking about what rural is and what rural isn't. So it's really an honor to be able to host you today, Henry, and have you as our guest as we talk about what the rural desk is going to look like and how we can help you to do that job so that you're able to help us out in the field. So introduce yourself to our members and we'll get going from there.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. As Melissa said, I'm Henry Dunkerson. Currently, I'm a Title I and Title II program specialist for the department. I'm just shy of being with the department for 3 years. I came from Safford Unified Schools, where I had a 30-year career, taught 4th grade, then moved into a student support position. And my last 11, I was director of instructional services. But even more than that, my graduating class was 24 students, and that was one of the largest groups. So not only did I work in a school system that was rural, I went to elementary and high school in a rural area. So near and dear to my heart. I'm not positive what my position is going to look like here at the department. I've been asked to serve, I think, because of my background, but as of yet, I'm hoping to be just as frank with you all. I've not been privy to any kind of meetings with leadership at all. So I will do my best, and I will certainly be willing to step forward and carry your message to the current leadership and let them know. So again, happy to be here. I will be taking a lot of notes, and I will be sharing with them, and hopefully together we can make something happen.
Fantastic. So Sean, you want to kick us off with some questions and context?
You know, so I had the opportunity to work with Henry back when he was in Safford, and then over the last 3 years, you know, he's been our specialist in Pima for all 3 of those years, and I gotta say, you know, doing an excellent job. Thank you very much, Henry. You know, the rural questions, you know, that affect schools and where that nexus between that and the department is, you know, does, I think, largely, you know, hinge on Title I funding. That seems to be one of the biggest issues when you talk to superintendents in rural districts is, you know, the complexities of the application process, and especially I think the SIAP, LIAP, CNA, Fishbone fiasco. And I know from talking, I just saw that Superintendent McGoy, the Graham County superintendent, just jumped on, and we were talking yesterday about CETA, and I'm really excited about the possibility that you will be able to come to CETA and maybe even talk to some of those topics and present something for admins to help them understand what is being looked for there. And I guess maybe that's something that it'd be great if you could help us to understand is, what's the department, it seems like there's a lot of hoops to jump through, but which are the ones that really matter?
Right, and which ones are based on statute and which are what we'd like to have instead of having statute behind it. The current leadership is looking at the LIAP and SIAP, all of that process, and hoping to streamline it. I'm hoping by CETA that we have some concrete moving forward direction. But as of right now, for the 24 application, at least, it looks like it's going to be the same. But it looks like it's going to be moving forward, that it is going to be more streamlined with some things possibly moving off that are currently on there. So work is happening currently right now on that.
Okay.
But again, that is something that we've heard from the field, not just rural. That's something that we've heard throughout the state.
Henry, one of the questions that I've gotten from a number of rural superintendents is the expectations. You talked, there are some of those things around grants that are statute, and then there are some that specialists would like to see. And I'd like to focus just a little bit on the things they'd like to see, because there is some administrative burden when you're a rural leader and you're the one that's not only having to do the grants, but you're also the superintendent. Maybe you are driving a bus, maybe you're teaching a class, and the time that we have is very limited as it compares to an urban district that might be larger and have a department that focuses specifically in this particular instance on grants. Is there a way that leaders can have those kinds of things that are preferences eliminated from the formula so that we can make sure that the first time that we submit an application or a revision, we have an expectation that it's going to be approved, and potentially some feedback on what things would be nice to have in there versus what absolutely has to be in there?
Yeah, I can take that message forward. I know that we are working with our new directors to try to be more consistent between program specialists as well. And that goes up to the director level as well, because I work under one particular director, but I know that when my grants move forward and a different director looks at it, there can also be a difference in opinion between directors. So I know that we are working on that in our own unit, trying to be more consistent all the way around. But I will take that message forward as well.
And to follow up, so is it possible in your role as liaison for us as leaders that have those issues coming up with our grant applications or our revisions to contact you first to say, this is what we're getting. We know that there's a district next door that had the same or similar kind of language and it was accepted.
Yes.
Why is mine being rejected?
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, that would help me a lot, because then I can bring concrete examples forward and say, here's some inconsistency. This is what we need to do to bridge that.
Right.
So that we're being consistent across the board. Absolutely. Yes.
And is there anyone that would like to speak further about that as it relates to grants or the revisions that we're doing right now? Shanna, go ahead.
I just feel like we just did our Title II revision for the even FY23, and they're just asking for more and more and more details. So who went to the training and what teachers did you train and exactly what teachers? It's really none of your business. You're not my auditor. Did they teach? So if I paid some summer PD, okay, so exactly what teachers were here, who did they train? It's almost like they wanted me to upload an agenda. So it's really like taking my power away. And I've paid for summer PD for years, and now you're asking for just very fine details. It's cumbersome.
So I do know that they will ask who attended just because of account coding. So if it was administrator, that would be 2,300 instead of a teacher, which would be 2,100. So I do know that they will ask generally that, just to make sure that coding is correct. But continue. I'm listening. I really am, and I'm really. When I tell you, I'm not trying to make excuses. I'm just trying to explain the process. So please know, I'm not trying to take a stand. I'm just trying to explain from our perspective. Okay, thanks. I'm listening. Go ahead.
No, I was just
Kristen
gonna
and
say,
then Carolyn.
yeah, was gonna say, I really appreciate it. I agree with Shanna. And I also agree that streamlining the process would be great. I could give hundreds of examples. I mean, really, I've had specialists tell us to put things in, and then another specialist in another program tell us it's not allowable to put that in. And it's all this back and forth all the time, which can be very frustrating. So I'm very happy to go to you with all of these ideas in the future. So thank you to Melissa for asking that question.
Yeah, please. Thank you.
Carolyn?
Henry, I'm going to build on what Shanna said. Some of the grant applications have gone from 5 or 6 pages to 30 pages. And so, for instance, in the homeless grant, which in the first place isn't a huge amount of money, but one of the things that, for instance, that we've been doing is stocking kind of a pantry for our homeless folks. They literally ask for the shopping list. How many cases of water? How many cans of this? How many boxes of that? Sometimes we're not going to know that. You know, sometimes we're not going to know what we need. You know, if something goes quickly, then the next things we need to get with those funds may be different. And so this, I agree with Shauna. This absolutely in the grass detail is hugely time consuming. And just not a very efficient way to do that. So thank you for listening.
I appreciate the analogy there. I like that. In the grass details. I like that analogy. It gives me a good perspective. Thank you.
And one question I have now, hopefully that can be answered soon-ish, is that I know too, in the details, they're having us put like what a plane ticket would cost or what we're going to pay for meal reimbursements before anything has happened. And then we just have to go in and revise it afterwards. And it would be nice to not have to revise because they forced us to put in numbers that we didn't know before even going on the trip.
That's an example of administrative burden, since we're the ones that typically are doing all of that revision work.
That's what I was kind of thinking is there's a confusion of it's a budget. It's not an actual, and they're trying to make us force us, you know, I'll say you have $300 left, right? And you have to put it somewhere. So we're going to buy books. Well, then I have to go find a bunch of labels of books, but it's a budget. I don't know those books yet. You know, it's May. I'll tell you in July what books I'm going to order, but it's a budget. It's not actuals yet. That would be very helpful.
Okay, thank you.
And Mary, you've been so patient.
Well, I appreciate all the comments that have been made and, you know, just wholeheartedly agree. I would add, we're a single site district. So we have to do things for the school and then also for the district. So there's a high level of redundancy there that is really, really frustrating. So yeah, that's an issue.
And
I do see that.
And Henry, there are 55 single site LEAs in the state. So that's 55 superintendents that have that burden. I'm one of them. So is Kristen. I mean, we have so Steve, yeah, we have several on this call this morning, but it is, as she was saying, it is frustrating that they're the same. Sometimes they're different. Title III is a district level grant, whereas there are things that are school level, but still the duplicative nature of some of those tasks.
And just, you know, adding for a single site district, you know, we are already stretched thin. So I'm the principal and the superintendent. I don't have a grants director that's able to do this work for me. So not only am I having to do all of the work of larger districts because I've been in that position in larger districts. But now I'm having to do additional work as both the site, for just the single site and for the district. So again, we're not, as a small rural district, we don't have less work to do than those larger districts.
Right. Didn't mean to interrupt. Sorry. Yes, I'm just agreeing. Yeah, I remember the multiple hats when I was in Safford, but I had more help than Sean has in Pima. I mean, I had a Title I coordinator that was working and a special ed coordinator when I was in Safford. So I had a couple of people, but I get that. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Mary. Steve, go ahead.
Thank you, Henry. Nice to meet you. I can echo what everybody else here said. I've shared a bunch of stuff with Melissa in the last 6 months that has been insane about what we've been asked to do. So these guys have pretty much hit on some of that. My issue too is, we're in school improvement. It seems like school improvement and Title I are fighting with each other for whatever reason. They can't make a decision on what they actually want us to do to get better. And we're kind of stuck in the middle. School improvements telling me one thing I have to have, Title I's telling me another. Who am I going to listen to? Well, I'm going to listen to Title I that's giving me more money than school improvement, which will probably get me in trouble. And I've had this discussion with a bunch of different people, and it's always the same thing. No, you don't have to have that. Yes, you have to have that. And I'm like the rest of, most of everybody. I'm the principal, I'm the superintendent, I'm the 504 coordinator, I'm the homeless liaison, which I got to make sure I do my 8 trainings a year and everything else. But that's right now my biggest issue. I have my school improvement specialist coming on campus on Thursday. She's going to ask me about my IEP, and I'm going to tell her, well, I haven't done anything since our last meeting because I really don't know what you want me to put in there. As far as the IEP, Title I has told me before, I have to have an action step for all 6 principals. School improvements tell me, no, you only need 3. And again, I'm stuck in the middle trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do. So, but I appreciate you coming on board, and it's a first for us, and I look forward to working with you.
So Steve, we ran into this when we were in Tucson for the ESSA conference. Leanne Bally and I were presenting, and we heard that very thing. Title I should not be asking for an action step under all 6. That is not a requirement. So that's one of the inconsistencies between program specialists ourselves that we already are aware of. So that's one thing that we will be addressing specifically, is that one, because we did hear that from the field when we were in Tucson.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So Henry, I'm going to read a question out of the chat that Michelle Perry put in as far as administrative burden. She says, recently in working with budgeting for FY24, a question regarding the new Group B weight for free and reduced lunch, that poverty weight. As a provision to school, we have a school-wide percentage, but not yearly applications to give us the ADE report number that corresponds with that percentage. How should that be addressed?
So I don't work a lot with free and reduced, but I will certainly take the question where I can get an answer for that. We do have a specialist within our unit that works more specifically with that. So was that in the chat? Because I've been trying to pull things from the chat.
Yep.
So I will get an answer for that. I don't know that.
Okay. And Michelle, if you would put your email address in the chat, he can capture that as well. So he can,
yeah, please. Yep. I'll get you an answer.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
And Shanna put something in as far as, and I've done this too. You've got 2 different monitors open and tabs so that the cut and paste option of doing some of these narratives, which are extremely lengthy, whether you're doing LIAP or SIAP or some of the narratives in some of the grants, is it possible to have a population button, just like we do in those grant applications year over year for the SIAP and the LIAP? I mean, if it's possible in grants, why isn't it possible in some of those supplementals and some of the monitoring that would be very helpful, not to have to retype year over year.
Good question. I don't know the answer for that, but I certainly will take that forward.
Melissa,
And follow up. Yep.
the same exact information, identical, goes into to the fishbone, it goes into that why thing, it goes into your principles, it goes into the summary, it goes in like 5 times. You're just cutting and pasting the same exact verbiage.
So it would be helpful not to have to work, because you sometimes lock yourself out.
Oh, it
of
times
students.
out on you. It
Yeah.
times out. Yes.
So
Yep. Does on us as well.
And maybe as long as we're asking for lots of things, if there was a
wish list,
way,
rural wish list.
yeah, to have the LIAP and the SIAP for single site schools be combined, with, a slash or a hyphen, and then make the tags, like if it's a Title II and that has to be a LIAP issue, just put LIAP on the Title II tag so that we can tag it that way. And for Title I, you could do LIAP or SIAP, but then we could just tag the things and just write one plan instead of separating them into the 2 plans.
Potentially
we
55.
fight with tags. We, just so you know, program specialists find the tags just as frustrating as you do. We've got to find a way to make tagging easier, because we struggle with it ourselves. So.
And to follow up on that, Henry, Jamie Festa-Daigle, who's with Lake Havasu, if we're asking for things, and I guess we didn't know we were doing Christmas shopping, but it certainly is an opportunity to kind of give you a feel for what we have issues around. A spreadsheet in GME, ADE has a spreadsheet for us, and we have a spreadsheet at the site level, but we are entering dollar amounts in narrative form. So Jamie, if you want to come off mute and explain that a little bit further, please feel free.
Sure. So like Steve was saying, many of us oversee all of our grants and, just a huge number of things. And so when we're entering the budget, the narrative, we're just putting dollar amounts in, but there's no totaling. And so to go back, especially in Title I, where I'm making sure all of my schools, the PPA all lines up. It's just like this insane amount of work to do. And again, this is another over and over and over again. Whereas if there was just a spreadsheet, it would total it. And whenever I'm off, my program specialist is like, here's my spreadsheet. So again, if we all have spreadsheets, it would just be great if there was a spreadsheet.
So that keeps total as you're doing your narrative, so that the dollar amount goes
Yes.
in and then just totals.
Right.
Gotcha.
So I'm putting
Gotcha.
like teacher benefits. There's the amount, as opposed to through all of these different revisions and all of the different things. I mean, there's times where we're off by pennies and it's taking weeks and days. I mean, it's just awful.
And that would be something that would benefit all districts, not necessarily just rural. We really are a very happy, engaging crowd. We really are. We're not all complaining. although it is wonderful to have somebody that can carry that water and that message back to the different departments. And so thank you, Henry. I appreciate your willingness to do that.
I'm honored to do it.
Are there other issues, other questions, things that you want him to know about as far as your rural community or your rural district that would be important for him to have context for you and your concerns around?
So I would throw out there, I'm sorry, Wes, you had your hand up though. I don't want to cut you off.
Go ahead.
No, I mean, the biggest issue that threatens our abilities in rural Arizona to provide a quality education for children is still the attracting and retaining of quality teachers. And it seems that, that's something that continues to evolve. I was talking to a superintendent yesterday and we were reminiscing about the good old days when we would look at the teachers graduating from NAU's teacher preparation program, say, oh, how many, they've got 12 this year. Okay, well, hopefully we can get 3 of those and you can get 4 of those, I mean, and now we're talking to the program, the people that are admitting students to the programs and saying, well, gosh, how many do you have in the next cohort? And are there any of those that you think would be interested in teaching math at the middle school level? And we're hiring them younger with less experience, less training. And then, we're having to provide the professional development resources. And that may be an area where, ADE could provide some support in terms of professional development, guidance for districts, because, we're all in that boat. We're all hiring teachers that again have less experience, less training than they did 10 years ago, which means we need to do something different to meet that need.
And I will say, from a certification standpoint, it's nice to be able to have those intern certificates and emergency certificates. But there's a cost for that potentially for some of the people that we're putting in classrooms. So yeah, highly important, Sean, to be able to support them so they stay and they're effective while they're staying.
Well, we're seeing a greater need for districts to have, teachers support people, where, coaches or mentors or, and not just academics, but behavior, because helping teachers to deal with classroom management without getting burnt out in the first, 3 months. I mean, it used to be, we tell teachers not to smile before October. Now we're telling them not to quit, please don't quit before October. It gets easier. But it just, I don't, like I said, there's a need for something new there. And any chance that I get to talk to people in higher education, I try to keep them mindful of that change. And I hope that people at the department are also, not thinking that we're operating in the same environment that we were even 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago. I mean, this is changing, it's changing fast. So.
And to follow up on that, one of the things I know that we're all looking at right now, if we had a school safety grant, was the concerns around being able to find, I know that there's a push at the department right now for a school resource officer, but a lot of our rural communities don't have local police, they have sheriffs, because in example, my community, we're unincorporated, so the sheriff is who responds to us. So it's not going to happen that we're able to hire on a school resource officer, which means that we potentially lose out on that grant money and don't have the opportunity to move forward with either a counselor or a social worker, which the school in a rural community is the hub for a lot of those supports for our families. And when we don't have those positions that are able to be funded through those grants, like many of us had social workers and counselors because of that school safety grant, it's a loss for some of those needed supports for our students. So I to the extent that you're able to carry that message, how important it is, and not saying that that school resource officer isn't an important position,
Right,
but
right.
the other two are just as important and actually probably more needed in a lot of the communities that have superintendents I've spoken to about that grant.
Got it.
Wes, go ahead.
Well, and Henry, this school safety grant sort of touches on an issue that may be best to help create awareness with you, but it may also not be the kind of thing that we could expect you to change at ADE. And that goes right into social emotional learning. And the apparent, if not real, disdain for that coming out of the fourth floor. So now that's not a thing I expect you to jump in the elevator and go up to the fourth floor and start thumping on the superintendent's desk.
I might get my walking papers if I did that.
Right, right. I think he'd throw you out of that big window that he has. But possibly part of the burden you might have to bear to help us is to get a sense from us how, I'm going to be semantically correct here, how misguided it is to completely not just ignore social emotional, but to diminish its effectiveness. So part of what I see in this relationship is it's just nice to be able to brief the guy at the rural desk sort of what the sense of the troops are. And the other thing is too, as I go off on another tangent, is how can we support you in terms of how can we present issues, concerns to you in such a way that's the most effective for you to communicate those.
Just to quickly respond to that, just a little more of my history. I was 18 credits away from having my counselor's degree before I moved into administration. So SEL is near and dear to my heart. I see the value in it. I worked with kids constantly, from broken homes, grief, kids that lost parents, grandparents, kids that had behavior issues. That was part of my position in Safford before I moved into administration. So I see and know the value of that. I have not been given direction as I started the meeting as to what form they would want me to bring this forward. I'm going to go forward. Just this is the list. These are the things that we talked about. These are the things that you need to be aware of. And the next time I come before you, hopefully I will have an idea of what they're hoping to see from me. As I said, I was given no guidance, didn't meet with any leaders. I was just asked if I would be willing, and I said, absolutely, I would be willing to be the liaison. So I just want to be totally honest and upfront and share with you that I will step forward and I will say and share your message. I'm just not positive what will happen after that. So.
Well, as long as, if he throws you out that 4th floor window, as long as he doesn't select my wife to be a replacement, it's okay. But this is the kind of dialectic I was hoping for, to help give you an idea of what's actually happening.
Right.
And then you can use your experience and your judgment in sort of setting up the desk based on the needs you've heard expressed from us.
Absolutely.
And this is just one last thing, and I promise I'll shut up. Possibly as we move along, some sort of regular newsletter type format submission from you out to the districts. All that's going to do, I think, is really reinforce the notion with our members that there is a guy at ADE who hears and understands.
And maybe the format for that is a Q&A. If we did a question of the month or question of the week, and then can run that through you with a rural lens, and then put that information out to the membership, and members can continue to ask questions. And I think that might be a way to make sure that what you're putting out is relevant and current. So it's something that we can set up. I'm going to move to Glenn and then Jamie.
Thanks, Melissa. Maybe a lens on a lot of these things on the administrative burden on SEL would be that rural educators are necessarily eminently practical. We don't have the time or the resources to waste. So, you know, despite any suspicions, we're not actually teaching critical race theory. We're not encouraging exploration of gender roles, but we do need to teach our kids how to make and maintain friendships. And we do need to teach them how to balance their personal schedules and calendars. And we do need to teach them a lot of these traditional values, we can call them. And by the same token, on the practical, we're in the middle of completing our IAPs, having to do all of our budgeting for next year and do all of our state testing. Somebody needs to understand that rural schools operate on almost a medieval kind of agricultural based calendar. And so a lot of these things need to parse out. My personal bête noire is the changes in course code numbers that come out in the fall. So next month, or in May or June, I will put my new course catalog in front of my board and I'll get it approved. And then in September or October, we'll have to go back to the board and look like we screwed up because the state has changed the course code numbers. Surely there could either be a deadline for those changes from the state or the understanding that the next time we submit a course catalog, it needs to be updated. It's just stuff like that. And one thing, maybe you can do this, or maybe you need a panel of 10 rural educators that everything gets run past and 4 or 5 need to respond, because I can tell you that most of us are going to tell you why something is faulty in about 20 seconds. Sorry. Thank you.
Good feedback. Jamie.
Okay, so I have 2 things. One that I think is going pretty well, and I feel like there was a shift, and it's probably coming out of COVID. But there was, I think, a really good job, and I feel like Sean led some of these efforts about really supporting districts with understanding what their assessment data actually meant. But I think that really needs to continue, because that's the only way that there's going to be improvements. But Sean really did a good job with the ADE communicating to rural, like, this is what all of this means. Because I know when I went to the ADE assessment conference last year, I got a lot of, well, doesn't your data person just do this? Doesn't your assessment person do this? Like, that doesn't exist. And so the more we can make that information usable, and it's really nice that it's usable by me at the district office, but what really matters is that it's usable by principals and teachers. And it's still, although Sean has like taught us things, it's still not usable by and large by a principal who's also has all of these competing tasks, like Glenn just said, at the same time. So I would love if that continues to be a focus. And then something that really is, I think, in legislative land, there's been a lot of support around advanced placement. Advanced placement is lovely, but I would say by and large, most rural districts spend a lot of time in dual enrollment as opposed to advanced placement. And so there's funding for getting kids to pass AP, and that's great. I'm really excited for like my one calculus class. But what I really want is to support those teachers and those students that are doing dual enrollment. And right now we have a great community college in Mojave County. They've worked with us so well. We're looking at creative things like using instructional time model for kids to go over there, but we have to be able to support teachers who are going back and getting credits in mathematics and science. And so I would love to see that AP pot split and support schools and teachers, because right now, for the most part, I mean, whatever is coming out of M&O, we can support teachers, but there's nothing from the state. And we're just saying, like, thanks for having a master's degree in physics. You want to keep teaching and not go, I don't know, make real money. So that is a shift that is definitely needed.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jamie. Anyone else have an issue or topic of concern or celebration for that matter? It doesn't all have to be doom and gloom, but is there anything else that you'd like to have Henry be aware of, or questions that you'd like to ask him? Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, just something positive. We have a youth council, Superior Youth Council, made up with about 5 students right now, including my daughter, who's a senior. They're actually in Washington, D.C., visiting with Cinema and Senator Kelly. And my daughter had texted me and said, hey, we went to the White House and President Biden was getting off the chopper and we got to saw him. And so I thought that was pretty cool. Kids in Superior, Arizona are visiting DC. Every kid should be able to visit Washington, DC at some point in time in their life. So I
Gives you a
thought,
total different perspective. It really does.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I've been there a couple times, and I'm glad my daughter got to go, and they're having a great time out there. So
Thank you for the positive.
Well, and it wouldn't hurt for us to because Henry, I think you got an idea, you're going to get an avalanche of requests and issues and problems and all that, but maybe if we could shoot Henry some good news now and then, he won't get thrown out of that 4th floor window.
Henry, just to follow up on something that Jamie was talking about with the dual enrollment, Michelle Perry put in the chat to expand on what she mentioned, that calculus class is possible because we elementary districts are doing our best to offer Algebra 1 at the 8th grade with no additional funding. So just food for thought. It's a good point. Donna, go ahead.
Hey, Donna.
Hey, Henry. I don't usually attend these roundtables, and I regret that because I've just in this past 40 minutes or so, I've learned a lot. I'm here to support Henry because he was my mentor, an official mentor, but he's a year ahead of me in our careers at Safford, and he was an excellent colleague, mentor, you name it. And I think this is a double-edged sword. I love that Henry's in this position, but I'm also protective of him because for all of you that don't know him, he will not stop. He will devote so much time to every single word that was shared today that I think, oh my gosh, I don't know how he's going to do this heavy lifting. But one of the things that I'm in my 19th year in my position as county school superintendent, and Tom Horn was the state superintendent of instruction when I began. There was a lot of service that was provided in those early years of my career from the department that I've seen go away for a variety of reasons. But when Sean mentioned professional development, we used to have the Title II grant and the county school superintendents throughout the state. And I'm looking at Drew, who wasn't in that role at the time, but was absolutely a presenter in a lot of different areas through different programs that were available, the technology integration specialist position, the reading first. A lot of things were in place that people just don't even know used to exist. Henry and I were co-trainers for our district for new teacher induction. I still do that for Graham and Greenlee County new teachers, but we don't get money from the department. We don't get money from the county. I have the privilege of being in an area where we have a very robust United Way of Graham and Greenlee County. They pay for everything my office does for professional development. So the takeaway here is, Henry, you and I know what is possible because we did it. You still support me by coming out here to Graham County to offer expertise. If the department can get back to shaving out those dollars for professional development, for new teacher support, your county school superintendents are very well placed to do that. I'm still doing that, but I'm doing it with no state. These dollars are out of our community members' pockets, and they must think it's worth it. But I do not look forward to the reporting process because I haven't filled out an ADE grant or revision in over a dozen years. And the redundancy that I heard today, that I remember telling the people of the department, why on earth are you in silos? Why do I have to fill out the exact same information across the board? Do you not have offices near enough each other that you can confer a little? And I see that's not changed no matter what the grant is. So that's still something needs to be fixed. But I still report to people that do give me money, and the redundancy is a little bit of a problem on that too. I understand they have to be accountable, but if Henry hears something, I know he's going to follow through. So I just want to say thank you for saying yes to this position. I can't tell you what that means to all of us. I just personally know for more than 30 years, but I can't say enough good about Henry. He's fantastic. Hardest working man in school show business.
That's very kind, Donna.
Thanks, Donna. Henry, do you have any questions for us? We've got about 15 minutes left with you. Do you have anything that you want to ask us and provide feedback to you on?
I'm just going to ask for just continue to be honest and open and just tell me how the rubber meets the road. I don't want anybody holding back. I want honesty, and you're going to get the same from me, whether it's good or whether it's bad news. I'm going to give it to you straight. I may ask at times for confidentiality on that same vein because let's just say some people have been giving their walk-in papers when the new administration came, and it seems to happen quickly, and I'm not sure that everyone knows the reason why. So that's just blunt, and that's between you and I. But that's kind of the way I'd like to operate, if that's okay with you guys. You can be sure that I will take forward the concerns that you have without reservation. And because I've been asked to do it, and I will remind them that I was asked to do it from the top to fill this position. So if they don't like what I'm saying, then they shouldn't have asked me to do it. So.
Fair enough. Any other
Anyway.
last questions? I think I just cut somebody off. John, did I cut you off?
No. Am I still? No, the only thing that we touched on it, but I'm not sure if it bears any more depth. I mean, the school safety grant, when we went through the process 3 years ago, was a tremendous opportunity for rurals to access funding for social workers, for school counselors, for SROs, and obviously, local leaders know where their needs are. As this process, started and then stopped and then started again, and yet we've heard some things from SPI Horn, that what the vision is for this grant. Is there any concrete information on scoring? Is there anything that I don't know that we can know about how best to craft a successful grant application in the climate? Because clearly the climate, when you compare it to all of the hours and hours of trainings, that, and some of them, I'm sure my district was not the only one that found that, oh gosh, those trainings that we didn't go to during COVID because, I don't know, we were busy dealing with COVID, that all of a sudden we had to make up, we're told we had to make up these trainings before we could submit an application. And it seems that the timber of those trainings and the timber of what's coming out now about what's important for schools to be doing with these funding, with this this funding opportunity have changed dramatically. I mean, I would say 180 degrees. And so, there's just any guidance or clarification that can be provided, especially, as we've talked about the administrative burden, we don't necessarily have the time to get into the weeds or the grass or even the trees, but we do need the funding. Many of us have positions that are reliant on renewing this grant, that we want to make sure we can get it right. And so any help that we can get there, again, would be a huge benefit.
Henry, when I was talking to Superintendent Horn about this, he mentioned that he was bound by certain legislation to essentially structure this the way he structured it. I think people, if that is indeed true, I mean, I'm not saying it wasn't true, but if that is indeed the case, helping us to understand just what ADE's constraints are when it comes to these grants, I think would help a lot. Because as you well know, if somebody at ADE gives somebody an answer in the field they don't like, they're going to blame ADE or the person on the phone telling them that.
Thanks, Wes. Any last questions? All right. Well, Henry, as you can tell, we have a lot of things to keep you busy, but I really do appreciate you, first of all, saying yes to this position. We are super excited to be able to have a person that we can go to at the department when we have questions or we have concerns. We need to get some answers, and having that one individual that we can start with being you is very helpful. So thank you for that. We'd like to have you continue to be part of our roundtable so that, you know, if we have those questions that come through, you have the opportunity to do some FaceTime with our members and make sure that they have an avenue to ask you those questions. But I know, oh, good, you put it in the chat. There's another way to get a hold of you, and that's your ADE email. So for those of you that are on the call, please make sure that you write down his contact information so that you're able to communicate with him directly. And Henry, we stand ready to help you in this position. We want you to be successful. So if there's anything that you need from us, we are more than happy to make sure that we are collaborating with you arm in arm to make sure that schools in rural communities across the state have what they need to be effective. And I really appreciate you helping us to lead that work.
Thanks, Melissa. I do think that there could be times when I may ask for more on your plate. Unfortunately, by giving me data, I'm not sure how data driven this may be, but there may be an occasion where I may say, I need some data to back this up to push forward. But I'll just ask if that's what I need. So
perfect. Yeah, and you have a very engaged cadre of superintendents in our rural schools that will definitely be willing to help you with that work.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you all for joining us today. We'll be putting this out later on for those of you that weren't able to join us. And please do feel free to reach out to Henry when you have those questions. And thank you all for being here today. And thank you, Henry.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.